Welcome to the Filmmaker's Playbook. My name is Jason Branagan, and this is a podcast all about filmmaking. On today's show, I talk to acting coach Helena Walsh. Helena is an international voice, acting and empowerment and resiliency coach. She has worked with some of my favourite actors, and she is the founder of Helena Walsh Empowerment Studios and the co-creator of The Actors Practice. In our conversation, we discuss how Helena came to her career, how she helps actors develop their craft, the impact of the nervous system on performance, the importance of being oriented in a scene, creating a trusting space, using reflection, how to embody performance, and much, much more. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you for listening. Helena Walsh, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure, Jason. Real joy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
I'm so looking forward to talking to you. You have worked with many friends and some of my favourite Irish actors, and I come to your work from the perspective of viewing you as an acting coach, but I know that your work encompasses more than just acting. So to begin, I was hoping maybe you could introduce us to what your work entails.
The kind of central part of what I do is an acting coach. And then I guess what it is rooted in is really the empowerment of the actor and the empowerment of the actor in their life and in their career. And the roots of that have come from my initial work as an actress, then to a voice coach. And then I started to get deeply interested in the nervous system and the mental health of the actor, the anxiety that an actor experiences on a set, going into an audition room. So I started to study the kind of neuroscience, the physiology, the biology of the nervous system. So I guess I have a multidisciplinary relationship with what I consider to be the initial conditions from which an actor can really thrive. And that's taken me down so many different routes and avenues. But fundamentally, it is about their empowerment in their life. And when they feel empowered in their life and grounded, I find the acting comes from an entirely different place, and it can be very complex and transformative in a way. So when I work with the actor, I'm working on really getting them to understand their nervous system, first and foremost. How is your nervous system and your body affected when you walk into an audition room, when you walk onto a film set, when you walk into a rehearsal room, and what skills do you need in order to regulate it, self-regulate it, so you can come into this really alive, alert, still place so that you can receive the story, the other actor, the director, and you can start to explore. Whereas if the nervous system feels in fight, flight, freeze, or please, it's very difficult for it to receive the director's notes, or it's very difficult to go into a place of exploration. And I really have found that work really the game changer to empower the actor. And then also for the actor to understand, how do I collaborate in a way that feels innovative and inspiring for them, and then as a result, inspiring for the team.
Amazing. There's loads of stuff there, and I'm going to pull all of those threads as we go. I was wondering, though, what was it that led you down this particular path? Was it witnessing actors in, I think the language I've heard you use is this sense of disorientation, and then trying to figure out how best to solve that puzzle? What was the interest, I suppose, that led you to where you are?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It kind of is the difference between the disoriented actor and the oriented actor. And I guess I felt the oriented actor was happier because they could come from their own creative source. The disoriented actor, to me, felt like there was a lot of suffering, a lot of self-criticism, a lot of intensity. So I would watch them, and I also felt that I guess the more it kind of, because I had been a voice coach prior to this, and I was working with people's body and their breath and their relationship to story and language. And I saw that transition when the smartphone came in. So I saw the effects that had physiologically on the body. And all of a sudden, the word anxiety started to enter the room, which never had been in the room before. So there seemed to be a kind of vigilance that I saw in the physicality of the actor, and that vigilance was creating an intensity of thought and emotion that was affecting the actor's ability to be more complex, more subtle, more playful in a way, to kind of it was affecting their ability to explore. So I asked the question, well, what is it? What's happening there? And how do I get the actor to become more regulated and kind of enjoy themselves more and really I'm really interested in the originality of that particular actor. So I've done a lot of training on reading the actor's body and noticing where is the freedom in their creative process and how do they work best neurologically, biologically, physiologically, imaginatively, sensationally, emotionally. And once I found that and figured out what that was and was able to reflect that back to them, they felt much more liberated. And I also saw a huge difference in their acting. Their acting became more nuanced, more subtle, more complex. They were enjoying themselves more. So, yeah, it was a dysregulation and an intensity that I was seeing in the room that kind of was pushed and forced. And I wanted to go, how does this become more easeful, more dynamic, more present, especially with younger actors where there appeared to be a lot of internal intensity. So I'd see them, a connection to themselves, but then they'd find it very hard to be in relationship to the other actor and to allow that other actor kind of affect them in a way that you'd see in a more, skilled actor. And also the actors weren't getting the chance to, like before there was rep theater where you got to practice more and you could kind of, be on stage and be in 3 or 4 different productions a year. And that's really important for an actor in order to practice their craft. And I was going, okay, they're not getting the chance to practice. They're being told as soon as they leave drama school, get an agent. Whereas when I was an actress, we left drama school and it was just ordinary for us to go and do our own work and create our own work. And we had to do a certain amount of proving of ourselves before anybody would, nod at us and go, oh, actually, you're interesting. So yeah, I think that was it. There was a lot of overwhelm, a lot of anxiety, trauma became something that started to come up in the room. And I was working with something called Fitzmaurice Voicework, and that works with in tremoring the body. So it's a kind of bioenergetics in a way. And when you tremor the body, it releases energy and emotion. And as I witnessed that, I was going, okay, there's something more happening here. So how do I help the actor as they go into more riskier places of themselves, stay here, stay oriented, and not lose themselves in the character? And I wanted a healthy actor. Like I would see them go and work with really established directors, some of the younger actors in particular, and not be able to shake off the character. And I wanted them to be able to, how do we develop skills where you can come out of scene, come back to being oriented, speak to the director, take the director's note on, integrate it into your story, and then go back into scene. And how do you hang up your hats at the end of the day and be able to go home and sleep so that you're not constantly spinning on character or feeling like you're completely derailed by it? So they were all questions that I was interested in. And I wanted to be the imagination. I don't want the actor to feel in any way they have to use their own unprocessed life and personal experience, which isn't often processed. And that can really cause a lot of dysregulation. It affects the voice. Whereas if their imagination is really alive and it's connected to their concept, that affects the sensation, emotion, the senses, and the body's going to believe it. you know? So they were all my questions in a sense. How can this be more grounding, more playful, and less suffering for the actor?
It's that idea, I think you pretty much said it exactly like this, of working from the imagination and letting the script do the work, as opposed to bringing that personal experience into it. So consistently trying to see the world of the work through the character's eyes.
Yeah, that feels just so much more interesting for the actor and for the audience to watch. It's like when I'm working with my actors in the beginning with a young actor, you're working on just this ability to come into the present moment, right? And a young actor is still trying to figure out their sense of self. Who am I in the world? So in those first few years, they're probably playing versions of themselves in a way. But as they get more skilled and they have a stronger sense of who they are in the world and sense of their own lives, which is why their own life is really important. It needs to be bigger than the career itself because it feeds the career. So your own life becomes, and I work a lot with the actors on this, is an art form in and of itself. You know, reading novels, reading short stories, being on the pulse of what's happening in the world, you know, listening to music, being fed and inspired by art, all of those, that's the job of the actor. Whereas it's someone else's free time. But for the actor, it's actually the thing that's going to keep you inspired. So for younger actors, they're establishing a sense of self. So just being present is enough. Like with a younger actor, sometimes if it's their first film and I'm working with them, I will just say, this film is just about you being there. You know, the director has created the circumstances. You just have to respond to the story, to the other actor. You know, you've got a very illuminating set that you can play off, and your nervous system needs to get used to being there. With a more crafted actor, I will move towards, you can start to lose your sense of self and really find this sense of the character. And that's where you start to open up, and it's empathetic resonance. You know, you have the ability to open up to another person's world and really pay attention to it and fill your thoughts and your imagination and your eyes and your ears and your touch and your sensations and emotions with the life of that other character. So I see that as a developmental process from less experienced actor to a more experienced actor.
There is something that you posted recently, which I thought was really interesting. And it was the idea of an actor coming out of a scene and saying, I don't know what happened, which strikes me as not seeing the world through the character's eyes and just not being present or connected in that moment. And when I heard it, one of the reasons it was really interesting to me was that, and please correct me if you disagree with this sentiment, but it felt so vital, or it feels so vital for a performer to know what happened, because even from a traditional acting perspective, this idea of want, do, feel in a method kind of Stanislavski sense, if you don't know what happened as a performer, you don't know whether you have got the thing you want in that scene or affected the other person. You're not seeing them, you're not seeing yourself or experiencing yourself in it. And I was just wondering whether you would agree or disagree with that idea of how that idea actually marries with something that is reasonably traditional in terms of acting process and intention and objective.
I don't really chat to my actors about intention or objective. And I feel the oriented and the disoriented actors. So when an actor comes out of a scene and they're disoriented and they can't remember what's happened, it means that yet they've lost a kind of relationship either with the other character in the scene, or there's been a heightened experience that's kind of overwhelmed, so they can't remember. Like any of us, if we experience something intensely, we're not oriented, so we can't really remember it all. And I talk a lot to my actors about, if you're living just an emotional life, that doesn't mean you're experiencing a life. Because to experience your life, you have to see it, you have to hear it, you have to touch it. So really, experience of life happens in a more subtle place. It happens kind of more in a sensational place. So when an actor goes into a scene and they come out of the scene, and this is where I use an exercise called orientation, which is the training that I did in organic intelligence. I've been doing it now for about 7 years, which is really on nervous system regulation. I get them to notice something they see, hear, and touch, so that they can bring their nervous systems down, maybe almost like it's like a ritual, stepping out of the scene, so that they can then reflect back. And I ask the question, so what did you discover? Because it's only when they come out of scene and then when they look back at it, can they actually notice what they've discovered? Because they have to experience it first and then reflect back and go, oh, actually, in that moment, this rage emerged. And I'm actually looking at her, even though I love her, at it, whatever it might be. But so they live and then they reflect, the actor, in a sense. Because the actor isn't going into the scene to do anything with the scene. Their job is to build so much belief in the story and have the story in their bones and their muscles and their cells and their imagination, so that when they go into scene, you and I are in a scene and I'm just there with you. And then when I come out is when I actually reflect back and go, actually, I discovered this. So that in each take, and that can take 30 seconds, in each take, you're going deeper. You're becoming more complex. Like I talk to my actors, it's not that one take is better than the other, because the first take, it's the body that is getting used to the circumstances. It doesn't matter about the mind. The body's getting used to the camera, the crew, all kinds of things. It's the body that the actor needs to speak to and regulate, because it's much more sensitive and much more vulnerable. The imagination and the meaning will just override the body all the time. But for an actor, the mind and body need to be in the same place.
So really, you're looking at getting the actor to embody story, so they can just go and be.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was going to ask that idea of reflection. I think reflection is just such a powerful tool in many, many walks of life. And I was wondering if that's something that you encourage your actors to do generally across the board, not just in training with you, but as an active practice, as opposed to something to just dip in and out of.
Yeah, exactly. I guess with all of the work that I do, when I'm working with an actor, the first thing I explore is to get them to practice to be in relationship with their lives and to be oriented to their lives, to kind of, what is it to experience a cup of coffee? What is it to walk in the morning in the natural world and really hear the birds, really see the light and the way it affects the shades of green in the trees, or really listen to sounds that when I'm first working with an actor, I orient them to what feels easeful, pleasurable, and good. Because the body, if it doesn't trust the environment, can go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So really, it's in any given circumstance, how do I feed my body that it can trust this environment? So I ask them to figure out, well, because many actors don't know because I say the work that we do is not to be safe. We're not creating a safe space. It's not safe for the body to feel vulnerable. It's always going to feel unsafe for the body to feel vulnerable. It's also going to feel unsafe to change. And the actor's job is to change and transform, whereas the body biologically wants to stay the same because that's what feels safe, even if staying the same isn't helpful, right? So what we want to do as the actor is create this agility that no matter what environment I'm in, you can find something in that environment that feels okay, pleasurable, easeful, comfortable, so that the body goes, oh, okay. And the breath is easy. And you're coming from a place that's more grounded. And from there, you can feed it something much more intense and complex. So I will always encourage the actor to really look to their life first and be alive to their life through their senses. So your sense of self is through your senses, not what you think of what you see, not what you think of what you hear, not what you think of what you touch, but what do you see? What do you hear? What do you touch? That's the present. So, and from what you see, hear, and touch, what are you experiencing? And only after that is the insight, the part that comes in. Whereas if I'm doing a PhD or I'm working in another kind of area, what I think about it might be very important, but for the actor, it's how I experience it, which is very different. So the actor, their primary tool is the experience of it in the body and how that it feeds the story and the imagination in a way. And that's really important. I work a lot with the actors in reflection. I will get them to write. So as you look back through your day, where was the moment? Where was the moment of pleasure? The moment of ease? Why? Because there's different phases that the nervous system has. And in phase one, the nervous system is addicted to the what's wrong attention. It's addicted, it has a negativity bias. It sees environments that feel risky as they have to be vigilant. So it goes into a state of, if I know what's wrong, I can fix it. Whereas if the body feels it can trust the space, it doesn't go into the what's wrong attention. It starts to be very curious about where it is. And it starts to explore. So the interesting thing about all of this is it's physiological and biological and neurological. And actors go, oh my God, they can be very critical of themselves. Am I a good actor or a bad actor? It's not about good and bad. It's actually about what's the truth of a given moment. And in that way, if they can figure out in their life what is it feels pleasurable, easeful, good, that builds a foundation then for them to kind of go into riskier environments in a way. Because their career is up and down like a yo-yo, they don't know their future, they don't know where the next job, that's an incredibly challenging way to engage in the world. So I work a lot with them going, what are you doing between jobs? What is that structure? You need to structure your life. You need to figure out, how are you eating? What kind of physical work are you doing? How are you practicing this ability to experience? And reflection is incredibly important for an actor and for an artist. How do I come to the end of my day, reflect back on my day, and what do I notice about it that in the beginning, what feels easeful, pleasurable, good? Because we have a negativity bias.
I love that language of trust. It's really interesting to me because so often we hear in terms of sets, let's say as a director, you might talk about trying to create a safe space for cast and crew and a place for actors to perform. But there's an interesting little reframe there where it's not about necessarily creating a safe space for actors, but a space that actors can trust.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on how a director would go about creating a space that an actor can trust, or is that something that an actor has to come to themselves and bring into a set environment that is still hopefully conducive to freeing them?
Yeah, so I think it's both and. I do feel the actor is responsible for understanding how they can trust any given circumstance. I also feel the director 100%, and directors do, they're amazing directors who create these trusted spaces. So trust is built on attunement and connection equals trust. So I will always say to my actors, you don't have to trust immediately, right? Because, I have to be available, I have to be open. No, you don't. So trust can be whatever is coming up for you in the moment. Trust it. And what could be coming up is resistance, fear, lack, nervousness. So just trust what's coming up and use it, include it, incorporate it. For the director, if an actor feels like the director has unconditional positive regard and a kind of respect for who they are and what it takes to walk onto a set and be vulnerable which is their job, that's already a game changer for the actor, and the actor can feel that. Who, if the director has the ability to just pay attention to what the actor has to say, and if the director is intrigued by that and interested in that, and can really have a conversation around that, then the actor feels like they matter, if that makes sense. And then a connection is built, and that connection can be something light, like I will talk about the power of unconditional positive regard. If an actor's nervous system is in something like a phase one, so they feel very heightened, they don't know if what they're doing is good enough, all of those things, a director can be a huge regulating presence for an actor if they just can be just with that actor. And even when they're very, very nervous, it might be just humor. It might be talking about something that's in the environment that's orienting the actor to where they are, because they become disassociative because they've actually found the set too overwhelming. And they're very simple things. It's like social engagement. It's even chatting, like when we got on this call today, you and I had a whole talk about plants and birds. And so that automatically made me feel easy. And you and I connected on that, our love of birds and our respect for those who can keep plants alive, So they seem like accidental conversations, but this social engagement part to help the actor feel at ease, it's really important. And it's a skill. So I do feel it's a both and. Attunement means when you speak, I'm kind of mirroring back what you're saying so that I'm hearing it. Like if I'm working with an actor, for me, the actor will always come up with something much more interesting that I could ever come up with on the outside, right?
Oh,
Because they're so extraordinary, right? And I do find actors just beautiful human beings. And right now we need a lot more humanity in the world, and I do feel their role is very important, and the role of storytelling and reframing, reimagining our future is more crucial than ever before. So I feel that with an actor, if their humanity is spoken to on a set and they feel like the director is interested in them and interested in what they have to offer, and I will always do that with an actor, go, oh yeah, tell me about that. And I'm going through their image channel a lot, which is very, very powerful, rather than their concept, because the concept can kind of get them stuck in the head. It's just magic when they feel free to kind of just explore then, if that makes sense.
totally does. Could I ask you, when you say their image channel, what do you mean? Is it, instead of thinking in idea thinking terms, that you're using a different kind of language?
Exactly. And the image will always be related to story. So I'm pretty rigorous about story, and I really honor the writer. And I will have my actors work on really, really exquisite writing. So at the moment, I have a scene study class that runs every 6 weeks. And we're doing The Wake by Tom Murphy. And Tom Murphy is the Irish Shakespeare, so he's pretty extraordinary. But when you read him on the page, it's like, oh my God, what's going on here, right? So there are loads of images within the writing already, and within what the world the writer has built. So when an actor comes out of scene, I might ask them, so what did you discover there? And they may say, I discovered that my sister believes that she's in control of the situation, and I'm worried about her sanity. So whatever it might be, I'm thinking of Tom Murphy's The Wake. And as they're speaking, there's an emotion, sensations, because they're in story, they've been immersed in story. So there's a sensation and emotion coming up. And I might say, okay, as you say that, what is the experience you're having right now? And you go, oh, I'm feeling tight in my chest. There's a kind of frustration emerging. And I go, okay, if that was an image, what might that image be? Oh, well, it's that the hotel is on fire, because in The Wake, the dilemma and it's over who's going to own the hotel. So I'm getting them to come into the world of the story through the image channel, because an image, as we know, replaces 1,000 words. And for the actor, the more, the more they can kind of speak an image. Now, some actors, very few though, find image difficult, but most of them are usually liberated by image. Because sometimes when the director asks the actor to kind of come through the concept, it brings them out of it a bit. Whereas if that were an image, the quality of experience that you just had, what would that be in relationship to story? They come up with it, immediately, because it feels like that's where they live in a way.
And it keeps them in story. I think the most important point, instead of pulling them out from where they're then going to have to reorient to story.
Yeah, so because often what I will talk to actors about is you have to take the note you're given and you have to translate it into your creative process. So you might say there needs to be more grief in that moment. So the actor has to go, okay, how does that relate to story? So they might kind of have to do a bit of reflection, spinning on that. And then that builds something in their body. And then they may have an image of a grave with a small cross on it with a 2-year-old's name. Whatever it might be. I'm just so that then brings them into, because all the time you want your actor in experience, not analyzing the character, not talking about the character, but speaking from the character. And of course, an actor needs to be able to speak in first person and third person, right? And I have a wonderful colleague in Los Angeles, Benjamin Matthews, who I work with constantly throughout the year. And he does a lot of this work on inviting the actor into this spinning on the dilemma, spinning on the problem. And that really helps ignite the body, and then it starts to bring up images. So the image channel is very powerful, in particular for Irish actors.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I feel it's because in our DNA is the Irish language. And I feel that from Irish to English, we speak English in idiom and metaphor. So I feel, because I travel all over the world and I work with actors from all over the world, there is a note and there is a cultural shaping in relationship to language, depending on the culture that I'm working with. And with Irish actors, the image channel is so vibrant that it's a very delicious place to kind of work off, because it feels like it's somewhere where they live anyway in their day-to-day. Because I find Irish actors, they live more between the image channel and sensation rather than emotion, right? Whereas my American actors might live between thought and emotion, right? So it's more, the stories can be more emotionally driven. I mean, I'm generalizing, hugely. But there is a cultural aspect that I'm noticing as well. But with the Irish actor, there's that access, because of the way in which English is used, to the image that directly moves into the body in a way and then affects the expression.
That's really interesting, and something I have thought of, not in that context, but in the context of just language and how different words and emotions or result states can be very, very different or mean very different things to performers when you are giving an actor notes.
Yeah, and I think that is, how do you find the thing that's going to liberate them? How do you understand, well, how do they work? It's also the actor's job because they need to be agile enough that they've got different directors with different visions. And it is their job to really pay attention to the director and figure out how they can take what the director's vision is and then embody it within their own process,
Yeah. I want to just jump back ever so slightly, and it's just to punctuate something that you had said when you were talking about the actors on set after I'd asked about what directors can do. And one of the things you mentioned was that idea of just the social aspect of the job. And one of the things that can happen to actors on set is they're there, they're ready to go, and something goes wrong somewhere else. And all of a sudden, people might be buzzing around to reset something. And often times an actor might be left standing, waiting, not knowing what they're waiting for.
Sure.
And it strikes me as something that in that moment, again, could pull them out of story or disorient from where they are. My point was really just, I agree with you. I think it's a very valid point and
Yeah.
an important one.
Yeah. So that's interesting because when I work with actors, say that does happen and say the actor, whatever is happening is a gift. Even if you don't think you can relate it to story, you can relate it to story. So if something happens and the actor is jolted, they can use that jolt. Okay, what has this got to do with story? Like everything is creative. Everything that happens, you could even say that it's not an accident. You know, that actually, yeah, how can I incorporate it? How can I say yes to it? Okay, this has happened. There's something that's given you a gift from the present and something's gone wrong. Fantastic. Because the last thing is like everything has to go smoothly in order for me to be like, that's just not the way life is. So these accidents, these things that go wrong, they can really lead you into an unpredictable place. And I think that unpredictable, unplanned place is very juicy for the actor. Yeah, you can really use it and incorporate it.
I think that's great. And it kind of harkens back to one of the things you said earlier, which was this idea of getting away from good and bad and moving into a place of discovery as opposed to those binary labels.
Yeah, so that's a big one, in the beginning with when actors come to me because I feel, what a job. Like they're externally criticized all of the time. I mean, it's like it's like incredible. So it's very easy to get into that. It's good, it's bad, it's right, it's wrong. So I work a good bit on there's no right and wrong. We look to what's already working and we expand what's already working. Because inside what's already working, it's going to open up to even more. Whereas if you look into what's not working in the human condition, it tightens and it goes into freeze. So that sense of you're looking for the truth of a moment because truth is uncomfortable, right? I also want the actor to get used to feeling uncomfortable because there's going to be resistance. There's going to be all kinds of things. And that binary, it's good. It's not about being a good or a bad actor. And also I feel when the actor can focus on the story and not themselves, it's hugely liberating. Oh, I come out of scene. It's not about, did I do a good take? It's about, what did I discover? What did I experience? If I go into an audition, oh, it's not about giving them what they want. I'm just going to go in there and have an experience. I mean, Bryan Cranston speaks about this all the time. I'm going to go in there, have an experience, and that's my radical assertion. And maybe I am the essence of what they're looking for, or maybe I'm not, because you're unique and original, and no one's going to offer it in the way you're offering it. And sometimes the director doesn't know until you walk into the room. Oh, yes, that's it. That's who I wish to see. So good and bad is something that the actor needs to work out of their system, because in good and bad, there's going to be judgment, bias, prejudice. So in the work that I do, I get them to incorporate their bias, their prejudice. Okay, now the character is biased and prejudiced, and incorporate all that stuff. Because you can't play a character you judge, just like we can't see a person we judge, right?
Yeah.
However, we do have judgment, we do have bias, we do have prejudice, even unconsciously. So in the beginning, when the actor is exploring the character, they're having to integrate all of that. It's like getting to know someone new. We're scared, so we're going to put up all kinds of judgments in order to, feel okay about it. And then little by little, people become more interesting the longer you know them, I feel, you know. And then it's the same with a character. You're coming in at the beginning. I need to know the character in my head. No, you don't. Like, I don't know everything about myself, you know? So you need to begin to know the character through your body, which is very, very different. So that sense of right and wrong is something that needs to be worked through because we've been taught to be right and wrong in school, right? So that's shaped us neurologic. It's shaped our mind-body relationship. So then the actor needs to learn, oh, actually, it's not about good actor, bad actor. It's actually all about the story. So I would say to my actors, as soon as we start working on the story, it's never about you again. So anything that comes up, even if it feels personal, is not about you. We're going to say it's all about the character, because then they can go, oh, okay, good. Because anything, like again, my friend and colleague Benjamin talks about, anything the character, anything you feel as a human being, the character feels as a human being. You know, so even things that you don't feel they don't belong, just try them, incorporate them and see if they do belong. Because the longer you're with the story and the more precise you are with that story, the more kind of attuned you become to the precision of what that story is about. And this is another thing that actors, they want to go into a story and feel connected all the way through. You can't in the beginning when you're exploring character. You have to build that connection. Like you asked me, how does a director create initial conditions of trust for the actor when they walk on set? Well, this unconditional positive regard and this sense of attunement. So it's same for the actor when they meet story. They have to listen to the story, not impose themselves on the story. But they really, that's why I am a big supporter of reading the script over and over and over and over and over. And I'm a big, when I work with my actors, I get them to write in first person. Like I might have them watch each other's scenes as their character and write copiously. So they're building the underworld, because when you and I meet, I'm sensing what's going on beneath you, even though I don't quite know, but there's a chemistry beneath, and the actor needs to build that world, even if it's never spoken about. So there's a huge amount of curiosity to be had around, how do I think like my character, and how has my character been shaped by their world? And that's so much about curiosity.
To go back to that idea of discovery, I think, and reframing what you're thinking or asking or engaging with after a scene is really interesting. If you're taking one thing away as a bit
Yes,
of learning, it's almost like that 1% rule, where that incremental 1%, you don't need to walk in 100%. It's about taking those single digits and building them all up.
exactly. That, I love that. Yeah, because what the actor's doing is creating moments, right? And what you want as the director and the editor is to see those moments. And moments are built through memory. So a lot of the work with the actors is I'm using, so we have different channels of perception through which we perceive the world. So we perceive the world through our senses, through our eyes, through touch, through what we hear, through what we smell. And then we also perceive the world through our imagination. We also perceive the world through our thoughts. We perceive the world through sensation. I feel warm, cold, heavy, tight. We perceive the world through emotion. And in the work that I do, we call this the mosaic, right? It's all these different colors of perception through which the world is received. And it is the job of the actor to be able to move in and out of these different channels of perception and have them kind of integrate in a way. And by doing that, you build memories. So really the actor's job is to build these memories little by little. And when they start working on something, that's what they're doing. I might read the script. And when I'm working with an actor, I'll sit with them, put them in first person, and I'll really work on something like a dream state with them. We'll move in and out of image, sensation, in relationship to where they are in their understanding of story. And then they'll go away and they'll read the script again. And now the next time they read the script, 4 or 5 other things have started to ignite. Like you say, in these tiny little moments, because that's where we build the truth. And that's how the body works. But why are they tiny little moments? Because we want to build a memory. Yeah. And the more memories you build, the more then when I worked with an actor, working, whether it's a feature film or a TV series, some of them I work with them for 3-4 months before, and some closer. We really build the memories from the story. So by the time they get on set, it's in their bones and their muscles and their cells, and they don't have to think about anything other than just being here and responding from that place. And then it becomes even something else, because it's like, okay, now I have the costume. I had an actor recently, and the director is extraordinary, and each frame is like a painting. And I was going, there's not much to do here other than you have these exceptional costumes. And, you look extraordinary, and you just have to respond to where you are, and you've built the story. So now just enjoy yourself, in that sense, because you spent the rigorous time building the memories.
And just for clarity, when you talk about building memories, you are building memories from the script and from the imagination. This is nothing to do with any sort of memory recall or personal memory. It's all
Never. Even if I just speak into that a little bit, there was a stage in my career where I worked with actors who wrote their own material. And when you write your own material, it can be very personal. And sometimes they'd write their own material and then they were to go on stage and perform it. But sometimes the stuff was so close to them, they couldn't. As a voice coach, they found it hard to speak it because it was unprocessed stuff that was in their lives. And the role of an actor is really to take someone else's unprocessed life and embody it. And you can embody it because it didn't happen to you. It happened to someone else. But you have the empathy and skill to be able, the empathetic resonance, to be able to feel for that story and inhabit it as if it is yours. If it actually happened to me, I may not have the words to express it because it's unprocessed. So that's why I'm not in favor of that. I'm not saying that it doesn't work, and I know that actors do it, and it can be, an extraordinary performance in and of itself. I just think it has a huge cost to the actor, and I'm interested in, it's a long career, and I'm interested in, well, how can this be truly liberating? And I think the imagination is endless and boundless. I feel the body and the nervous system are very innocent, so it will believe anything you say to it, anything you drop. It's the youngest part of who we are. It never ages, right? It can't, if you stay curious, it stays young. So there's something about that I guess it's my own bias, is that I find the imagination truly liberating and exciting. And I also, as a voice coach, I find the voice much more liberated when it's coming from that place, much more grounded in a way.
I think there's definitely, in my opinion, probably more power in the imagination, because even if you do bring something personal and you have to live that 10 times because that's how many takes it's going to take with coverage, I think it's also a well that while it will exhaust you, may not work eventually, and you find yourself stuck and unable to tap into whatever the heart of that particular scene may be.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we do know exceptional actors who have, used that in a way. And I can see how, yeah, it just takes its toll if you're having to do it over and over and over. Whereas if you can allow yourself go, wow, I've got this imagination. And that's why I feel reading novels and reading stories and feeding that, like really feeding your imagination between jobs and allowing that come really alive is a fantastic preparation for the job, rather than feeling you have to go out there and experience the world and intensely and everything. And that's how you're going to remain exciting actor. I think the imagination is just a playground of liberation for the actor, and it allows, I do see actors as artists. I know not every actor sees himself as an artist, but I do. I feel that they're an artist with the human experience, And the human experience is fragile and vulnerable and sensitive and beautiful and complex. So there's a sensitivity that it requires to be fed in order to stay alive and alert in a way, you know.
Yeah. And I would agree wholeheartedly. I think it's indisputable that actors are artists. Their palette is just different.
Yeah.
Something you touched on there, and I had seen on your Instagram recently, was this idea of, you talk about being alive in life and not just in the work, which I think is a little bit what you were touching on there. And I would love to dig into that concept with you a little bit, because it resonated with me, because it feels like something that is not just relevant for actors, particularly in this profession, although in a different context for actors. And it struck me as potentially being about identity and how we identify ourselves. I've tried to move away from using language where I say, I am a filmmaker, because the minute that is gone, who are you? And I'm trying actively to reframe my language to be, I have a great job where I get to make films and television with wonderful people. And I'm very privileged, but it doesn't define me. There are things that I am. I am a son, I am a husband, I'm a grandson, but other things, we don't have to be defined by them. And I'm rambling, but I was wondering if that's the sense of what you mean when you talk about being alive in life versus being alive just in work.
Yeah. And this is a huge, huge struggle, dilemma, question for anybody in our industry, because the industry, there's such an intensity there, right? It can kind of really take hold of your identity and you can get lost. So, but I say often when actors come to me, it's like there's a circle, and the circle and everything inside it is their career, and they're running around the circle, you know, trying to figure out who, that their identity is completely the career. So what I ask them to do is, okay, I want you to put yourself at the center of the circle. And when you put yourself at the center of the circle, you are, as you say, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a son, a daughter. So you are all of these different things in life. And there's something about recognizing the value of those. So this is to do with what is it you value and what is success. Yeah. So if you put yourself at the center, what does that mean? And how do you build a healthy ego around that sense of self? And that can be as simple as what kind of coffee you like to drink, what kind of food you enjoy, what kind of places you like to visit, where do you go when things get challenging, how do you spend your mornings, your afternoons, your evenings, who are the people in your life that matter to you, that have meaning, what are the communities that you are part of that really give you a sense of the bigger picture, that give you a greater sense and allow you to zoom out, and maybe you're in service in some way, whether that's taking care of your grandmother or your father, or that's, raising money for Palestine, or it's planting trees in a forest, or it's rewilding, whatever that might be. That kind of ego strengthening around the ability to have the bigger picture and the smaller picture coexisting. So in the work that I do, we talk about alignment as the relationship from biology to cosmos, right? So biology is, what are the things that really support my body and my mind to feel okay? So for me, I have an extraordinary companion in my border collie who brings me for a walk 3 times a day, right? And we go for a walk or a run, and that's ritualistic. And that repetition of something that allows my mind and body to just be in a natural environment daily builds the capacity for me to be the entrepreneur that I am, to work on the multiple dimensions that I have as a mother, as a daughter, as an entrepreneur, as an acting coach, as an empowerment and resiliency coach, and they're repetitive. So how to build that sense of self on the biological level is, what is it my biology, my body needs in order to feel okay? And that's our responsibility. That's the responsibility within our career to figure that out. Because we don't have a structure, in the sense of there's only a structure exists when there's a job, right? I will talk to my actors about, you are a leader. What's required of you is the same as what's required of a CEO of a major organization. Your leadership, your ability to lead your life and figure out what is it you need in order to stay innovative, creative. I mean, you have to constantly transform, adapt. There's nothing that you can just assume. There's no assumption in your career. And then the next part is family. So whether that's your own family that you were born into, whether that's a new family that you have that you are more comfortable with and you've developed, or your own family that you've created, how is that what matters about that to you, and what feels good about that to you? And this is the reflection part. And then there's communities. Community is the next part, balance within the system. So I talk about true empowerment is collective. You can be on your own, you can have power, right? But not empowerment, right? Empowerment is something that we feel when we are in collective presence. We empower each other in a way. And what's beautiful about our industry is it's collaborative. Yeah, we come together, everybody is an expert in their field. And when those experts are respected and given unconditional positive regard, extraordinary things can happen. And everybody takes responsibility for their leadership role. An actor is a leader on a set, whether they have 6 lines, 15 lines, or they're carrying, the lead, and then you've got cameramen and you've got all kinds of crew. Everybody is a leader in their own compartment. And I think it's about that. How do we value our part in the bigger picture? So community is very important. What are the causes? What do you care about? What matters to you in the world? And then the next thing, which is huge, is the planet. What is your relationship? I feel that's really important for our work. Also, as a kind of climate activist, I feel the more people can build relationship with the natural world, it's the most profound way of regulating the nervous system, if you do it every day. So the natural world is the only, like, I will spend a lot of time with the actors going, the only mirror you need is in nature. And that again is my own preference, but you use nature when you're confused. It will mirror back to you who you are and what you are. And then the last part is the cosmos. So whether that is you have an interest in the planets and the stars, or quantum physics, or religion, or whatever, or you meditate, or that you understand there's something mysterious. Mystery and mysticism is very important, I feel, in our work, because then we go, oh, there's something that I cannot quite explain happening or moving through me, and whatever that mystery, because there's the unknown and the known, there's the conscious and the unconscious. So that sense of self, it's built on all those different. So one level is not enough. It's not enough to just work on yourself. Mary Oliver says, first you heal yourself and then you heal the world. So then there comes a point where, it's about being in relationship with the world. And what does that mean? So that sense of self is on all those different levels in a way. And the beautiful thing is you can create it. You can choose.
You create a very strong image, or at least I connected to it as an image where I can see these things funneling down into alignment together, which is great. One of the things that I took from it, rightly or wrongly, was this idea of when it is the self doing things maybe with more intention and not letting yourself just sit back and be taken carving out time for those aspects of self where you can grow, improve,
Yeah.
calm yourself, as you mentioned, nature and stuff like that. When it comes to the cosmos and mysticism and mystery, I'm not sure whether you've read Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, but Rick calls it the source, and
Yeah.
talks about this idea that things just move through us, and he calls it source. And I think it's a great way to think about this thing that is bigger than us, because some people may not connect to different ideologies of what that is. But as a creative in that book, it really resonated. And I thought, as you were talking about that aspect of alignment, that popped into my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. And I do feel like I've created archetypes in my work, and I call them the map maker is the orientation part, is like for the actor, the map maker is no matter where you are, create a map through your senses of what feels easeful, pleasurable, and good. And then the next one is the dancer. So it's the actor's ability to track the different sensations in relationship to their environment. How is the body receiving that? And then I speak about the archetype of the lover, which is emotion. So tracking, noticing the kind of emotions that are moving through you. And I will give them, put on a gong, an hour a day, sit, just track. What are the kind of emotions moving through you? And if you notice an emotion and welcome it, it shifts every 30, 60 seconds. And that's what I want my actors to be able to do on screen. I want them to be able to realize, oh, love and rage coexist. They can have these paradoxical experiences happening within them all at once, so they don't get binary, black and white about, I'm just feeling rage. Well, actually also love and lust and desire, whatever it might be. And then another archetype is, I call it the poet, which is the meaning channel, which is thoughts that at its most oriented, thoughts are insights, and they give meaning, and really the writer has pruned the story to the degree that they're giving you this poetic expression of the world and the human relationships in the story. And then one of the archetypes is the mystic, right? So, which is consciousness. So again, I work a lot with that mysticism. It's almost like a more advanced craft, if that makes sense. It's like once you have built that healthy ego and you know what you like and you don't like as the actor in your life, and also maybe in your art form, there's a moment where, and you've put up, boundaries in your life to, like, I will always say, your success is in your no sometimes. For people who say yes, their success is in their no. For people who say no, your success is in your yes. Let's get a little bit of balance there. But the mystery part is a kind of moment in your life and in your career where you can let go of control and you can really give permission for something to move through you. And that's where the art form goes on to a whole other deeper level. And that's actually when it becomes a lot of fun as well, because you then don't feel like you are creating it. Something is creating you, and that's when I think when Morgan Freeman was talking about, I was listening to him the other day, the story is you lose your sense of self and become something. And I think that becoming of something is that source that allows you experience something you didn't even know existed or was possible. And I think that mystery part is essential in our work for our enjoyment of it, for our trust in really creating something that matters and that's meaningful and allows us trust something subtle that we actually don't see till the end of it, what's been created, what's happened. And that's so humbling. I think it keeps, the humility and the grace, and the curiosity and the kind of amazement and the wonder when you allow it be mysterious and the unknown quality. Yeah.
I love all of that. And I just have to say, I really appreciate the sentiment of that kind of opposites and duality in emotion, and that you can love and hate all at the same time. And it's something, for me, maybe occurs when an actor may kind of say, I don't think I would do this. And it's something I think sometimes it is script. Absolutely. Other times it's just a block that's there because it feels like the love and hate or love and rage can't coexist in a moment. But I love that that's part of your work, because I think it's really important, because there's a positive charge and a negative charge.
Yeah, beautiful. I love what you're saying. That sense of my character wouldn't do that. Try it and see, you
Oh,
know, and this opposition part, you kind of don't know. And that's the mystery part of what you're speaking into. Okay, let's see, because the director and the actor are working off impulse, and impulse, you can't know where the impulse is going because it's inexperience. You don't know till later. So you having the impulse to go try that, okay, let's try it and see. And then from that comes, because that's the mysterious part, especially if the co-creation is very vibrant and the chemistry is very alive to the story. You'll be leaping, and it isn't until later you go, oh Jesus, that's where we were going. And that's, I would imagine, for a director and an actor, very exciting place to be together. And I think it's yes and. So another thing I work with actors is getting rid of but. Yeah, but, and I go, yeah, and rage, and love, and bliss, and confusion, So that and word allows it include the paradox. And then, because for me as a voice coach, actors are obsessed with, I often get, how much comes through the eyes. And I'm going, leave the eyes alone. And actually, it's the tone of the voice carries the intersection of the story in the internal landscape. The eyes are receptive, and they're radiating the internal kind of workings of the story within. Because the actor's job is to take, it's always outside in, which is interesting. It's not inside out. Like, I'm outside first. The story's on the page. It's not in you until you start to really pay attention to it, start building these memories and these connections to it. And then that starts to live and grow inside your own creative process. And the more that happens, then you start to discover kind of whole new parts of who you are. So I think the mystery part is so essential.
couldn't agree more. Why don't we talk then about the body and the work you do with that, and how everything we have been talking about translates into the body. There is a quote, I got to read it so I get it right. It's by Simon Shepherd, and it's from Theatre, Body and Pleasure. And he says, theatre is an art of bodies witnessed by bodies. And it's highlighted in one of the books on the shelf. And even though film or television doesn't have the same audience exchange, I think that idea still holds up, because in a scene, more than likely, there's going to be bodies witnessing bodies. And I wanted to get your take on that. I thought it maybe resonated with some of what you're teaching, but I'm also aware I could be getting that a little incorrect. So I thought I would throw it over to you.
Yeah, no, I love it. Bodies witnessing bodies. Very beautiful. In the work that I do, I call it a bottom-up approach. So instead of a top-down going in through your meaning channel or even your image channel, I'm going, well, what is the body experiencing, and how does that feed the thoughts and the imagination, right? So, because when a body walks into an audition, it's actually the body that experiences something first. And then that feed, depending on what you're experiencing, a thought comes. But for so many people, they're not aware of their body, so they think it's the thought comes first. but it's actually not. So you have to slow that whole process down. And for many of us who've been educated in our imagination and our thoughts, and actually the work that I do with actors, which is why when they train in an intensive course with me, I do a lot of one-to-ones, because this movement from your imagination, your thought into your body, the body is wild, unconceptual, irrational, not reasonable, doesn't make sense, and works kind of off a poetic, almost fragmented way of experiencing the world that doesn't often make sense to the mind. You know? So that's why it's like a wild horse in the beginning when people start to come into their bodies, right? So from body to body, it is the body that is experiencing the environment. And it is the body then that is influencing the thought and the image. Like even a writer's writing out of, like, a very good friend of mine is an extraordinary writer. And he's the most curious person I've ever met. And he's just so insatiable. And he's 6 years old, going on 70 something, but he's the most insatiable attention to the world around him. So you can see how through his senses, he's allowing that world kind of affect his internal world first. And then he writes about it. But it isn't like you're writing about it and that, it's already happened within you in a way. So I take time. That's why the orientation practice is very important, because there's so much going on in the body, which is why so many people don't want to kind of pay attention to it because it's so difficult. So what we do is we orient through our senses first. I want to get you here and now in the present moment, and then let's touch into this inner world, just really subtly, really gently, because it's very powerful. Because I need you to be alive. It needs to be awake. It needs to be alive. And I teach this work called Fitzmaurice Voicework. So we do these 12 different postures that are these tremor postures. We're about opening different energy centers in the body. And we're doing that really gently while also making sure that the actor's never closing their eyes. They're never leaving the here and now. It's not disconnected to going in and having this intense experience. It's not going to be helpful, they're staying here and they're noticing, I see the magpie, a little bit of curiosity, cautious, where's my robin? I'm looking out to my garden, and I'm noticing what's happening in my body as I see something. And where that becomes really even more crucial for the actor on camera, what I believe is the tone of voice and the micro movements of the body, right? So if the body is stiff and tight, I'm not going to believe it. But we're sitting opposite each other now, and I'm seeing you nodding your head, and I can see the quality, of your tension in your eyes, and there's little micro movements happening that let me know that you're listening, right? And now you're smiling, so that's those little micro movements. The body is always speaking. It's always got these tiny little movements that it makes that I, as a listener, am responding to first and foremost, above and beyond what I'm talking about. So body to body becomes really important. So when I'm training the actor, I open up to the different parts of their body while remaining oriented. And then I get them to practice, as you're in the different environments, also listen to what's happening in your body. So these two things can coexist. And I do a lot of training of something called the body scan, which is in ancient mystic traditions all down, through the centuries. And the reason it is you have to train the brain that you have a body. Because if your brain is constantly thinking, you can just be a walking head and not notice anything that's occurring in your body. And a lot of the time, when I start to work with people's bodies, the one comment will be, I don't feel anything. There's nothing there. I'm numb. Because the body is so sensitive. If things are overwhelming, it'll shut down. It's too much. But the actor can't shut down. It has to be alive and awake and alert. So it needs to figure out, whoa, how do I stay open? So I my whole life's work of 30 years has really been about that relationship from body to body, and I see acting as physical. Thought is physical in the sense of my psoas moves my transversus, which moves my diaphragm, which moves my ribs, which changes my breath. Like everything is a physical action. Your thought is physical, but we don't think of it in physical terms.
I was going to ask about training the body. Again, is that just a process whereby you just have to actively engage in a daily practice of trying to be really conscious and open to it? I hadn't actually thought about that idea that the body experiences it first, sends this image to our brain, but we think, oh my God, my thoughts are running away with themselves. And now I feel it in my body, but the body comes first.
Yeah. So that when you walk into an audition, like, oh God, I feel anxious, oh, I'm sweating. Like it's the body. And then and then the thought comes in to go, well, you're not going to do very well, are you? Because this is the wrong state of being to be in. And you're supposed to be in a place of presence and alive, whatever. Then the body starts to tell the story, you know? So it's very different for different people. Physicality is really being in the body and feeling one's bones and muscles and sensations and emotions. And like I kind of feel you have to come into an erotic, and I mean that in the meaning of the word, uh, relationship with the world, where everything is around sensing the pleasure of life and being driven by, and what is the kind of work I want to do so that I remind myself on a daily basis I have a body. So whether that's you walking through a forest, running through a forest, doing a dance class, riding a horse, whatever it is you need to do, that's present and reminds you that you are a physical being. And I guess that varies for everybody. I'm a big believer in practice and process. I think what you practice I think everything is process. There are no results. And what that is for you can be different. Could be playing the guitar and singing a song is going to remind you have a body, sitting and in a park and just paying attention to what's there, and something arising in you, an experience dropping in. What am I experiencing right now? Is going to remind you have a body. So it can be quite subtle. It can be. I will ask my actors in particular either a dance class, a movement class. I think dance is an extraordinary way just to remind yourself that we move and that you're alive and every part of you is alive. Not to become a dancer, but to just recognize I have feet and I have hands, they exist and I can feel them. It's different to looking at them, but can you actually feel them?
I love it. It makes me think of a quote, maybe, I don't know whether I'd call it a quote, something I have heard in terms of mental health and this idea of get out of your head and into your body. I also love the idea that everything is process. There is no results. I think that's a holistic way of approaching everything, and the journey is the process.
Yeah, I mean, two things there. So I really want to honor the head. The head is lovely, and I'm saying it's included in like body and mind. It's just that we've been educated to kind of honor the top-down dominant approach of our thoughts and our imagination over the more sensual, sensitive, subtle experience of the body. And that bottom-up approach is, no, the body is included in this, and it works in relationship with the mind. And no one has to be dominant. There can be a kind of movement from one to the other in a sense. And then that sense of, I feel for actors, it really changes their acting when they realize everything's a process. I will say, you know, when you're shooting a scene, it's a rehearsal. You know, see it as a rehearsal, which I think is a beautiful way of looking at it, because then you're alive. You're not feeling like you have to give a result or have an end product. You're actually inside something and you're still exploring. Because as I say, you're arriving on set and you and I are cast in a scene, and I don't know how you've created your world. So when our worlds come together, we create a third world in a sense. And that comes up in the moment. So if you can be alive to that and open to that, that's massive. And then in the editing room, you have something that's alive, and you have so many takes because, oh look, this is really vibrant and there's something really happening here, and they're transforming in front of my eyes, and I guess that's what we want to see as the audience. So the process, it's always a process, I feel.
I think that's great advice, and I love the idea of approaching every take like rehearsal, because I'm sure I'm not alone as a director where you have watched this scene in rehearsal and there has been just something living and spontaneous, and then when you go for a take, it's just lost that thing that it had, and it can be difficult to get it back. And I think it's because it's still an exploratory process. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm on and I have to get it right.
And it's interesting, isn't it? What is the language the actor needs? And that's why I like this word, discover. What did you discover? Oh, you're here to offer an experience. How can I give myself permission just to experience this? I mean, it's a big deal to experience your life. It's kind of the holy grail.
Yeah.
To just be here and allow yourself be affected by the world around you. It's risky. And that's the trusted space. Can you give the trusted space for an experience to occur? And remember that experience and vulnerability need structure, and tenderness, and kind of attention. Like we all thrive in environments where there's unconditional positive regard, where we really respect each other, and I feel, for actors, that sense of strengthening their belief in themselves and how important they are as part of it. They're very, they're part of this, because it's also the actor's face is there, so they're the public. The public know who they are. Like it's like endless. You're just going, wow, and the more successful an actor becomes, the more known they become, which, yes, is maybe good, and it also carries complications because now anonymity and privacy are no longer there, and there's that to deal with as well. So I feel it's very important for actors to understand the collaboration that happens in a set, and there's the unconditional positive regard for everybody, and every part of that is huge, and that maybe when they come to be with another actor who they find difficult, that if they're grounded and in their own sense of how they build trust, they can really ease the nervous system of the other actor, And I'll talk, a lot to my actors who play leads. They're setting the tone of pleasure and enjoyment on a film set, as well, because of the role that they play. And how they are with the other actors matters, especially with the less experienced ones. They can make a huge difference to how things go, because everybody's kind of feeding off that dynamic, because there's a field, the kind of psychic field that happens in a film. Yeah. The field of the story, which is very, very powerful. And then there's that field, the alchemy of that can affect really the relationships and dynamics that's happening on set. So there's something there that also needs awareness and attention, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So when actors do come to you, what is the most common difficulty or challenge that they are having every actor is different. So there may not be something singular and most common, but I was curious if there are aspects that people maybe struggle with more.
Yeah, I think a big one is the nervous system. I think a big one is around their mental health and coping with the ups and downs of the career, and then often losing the love of it a couple of years in, because now they're being shaped by what they perceive the industry to be, and they've lost their own relationship with what it is to feed their own creative process. So they're looking at it as in booking the job instead of, and that they're not valid unless they book a job. Instead of going, no, 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 there's all this time in between where you're also of value. So a lot of it can be around suffering from anxiety, the getting stuck. I might have actors at different 10 years in, 20 years in, 30 years in, 40, who feel like they've come to a point and they're stuck and they don't know how to go to the next level. So I work with them on that. Actors who feel they want to go deeper and that they're stuck. I always talk about moving from intensity to complexity. So that a lot of actors will have a relationship with emotion and imagination and thought, but they'll have no, and that can lead to very intense performances, but then it stops them from being more nuanced and subtle. So I will work with them on becoming more whole and involving more, expanding their sense of their capacity of what they can do to become more complex. Some actors are in that place where they've just played themselves, that sense of self, which is important in, you know, in those first years, and they're going, I don't know how to create character other than me. You know, even though yes, it's your lungs, yes, it's your face, yes, it's your head, and so they don't know how to work with story, and they may never have, especially if they haven't trained in a drama school, they may never have kind of experienced an entire story that they've worked on and the world of the story, which is why I started about a year ago with my actors in my scene study. We would always do scenes. And then I realized I wanted to work on the whole story with them. So now we spend 6 weeks on the whole story, and they play all the different characters, not just their own, in the story, so they can get a sense then when they go back to their own character of their relationship with each person in that story. So it's a kind of, there's multiple reasons why people come, but they are the main ones, and it's usually around loss of enjoyment and being exhausted with it, and burnout, and they want to reignite their joy of it again, because when they connect to the joy, it's a home run, you know. And it seems so simple, but if you can, you know, the love that brought you here is the love that will keep you here, you know.
Yeah.
And it's love, like any relationship, no? So it is a relationship. Again, my friend Benjamin Matthews speaks a lot about this, you know, what is your relationship to your career? And as if it's a significant other. So that constantly needs creative input. Yeah, like any relationship, it can't just, as you said earlier, just let it happen to you. You've chosen a creative life. That's an unusual life to choose, because it's kind of outside the parameters of the normal societal structures where most people go to a job and their days are structured for them. The actor has to structure their own days, which is a big deal. And their body, the big massive difference is their body is a huge part of their work. So that body and I need that body to be sensitive and open, and that needs care. It needs care in order for that to happen.
If actors want to work with you, where do they go? How do they get a hold of you?
So they can get me through Helena Walsh empowermentstudios.com, which is our website. And we also have an Instagram. I think it's Helena Walsh Empowerment Studios. I don't know. I can't remember.
We'll put it in the show
I'm
notes.
not the person who deals with all of that, who there would be no studio without. Christina McMahon. But mainly through my website.
Perfect. Well, the work you're doing is brilliant, as your actors can attest to, and their performances attest to as well. So I have enjoyed talking to you so very, very much. It was great fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. It was really lovely.
And that's a wrap on Helena Walsh. Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker's Playbook. If you're enjoying the show, please share it with a friend and follow and rate us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have feedback, questions, or topics that you'd like me to cover on the show, please put them in the comment section on our Instagram at the Filmmaker's Playbook Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at Jason Branagan Director, and you can follow Helena at Helena Walsh Coaching. If you'd like to work with Helena, you can get more information at helenawalshempowermentstudios.com. Links and social media handles are in the show notes. Join me next week when I talk to director Phil Hawkins. Until next time.